Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the PromoMinds Podcast interview style. Today I have a great guest with me, Brittany Dewing. She is an independent agent with the World Financial Group. She's opening up her own brokerage in Kitchener, and we're going to talk all things insurance, personal finance, and all that stuff. So I would like to welcome to the stage Brittany Dewing.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me. Now, did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, it's actually funny because it's actually Dewing, but very recently I got married, so it's actually my maiden name.
Okay.
But I'm still getting used to the transition. So my new last name is Blake, so it's Brittany Blake.
Okay, right on. And now, just to get it out of the way, if people are trying to get in contact with you, what name do they look up?
Well, right now it's kind of a mixture of both. So I haven't fully transitioned everything over, but I'll still have both of them on all my socials. My email address will still be Doing for now. So for now, it's going to be Doing will be the easiest way to find me.
All right, cool. All right. Well, Brittany, if you could please just share a little bit about your background, your journey, what led you into this career that you've chosen.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm probably the typical, didn't dream of being an insurance broker. I didn't have, these crazy thoughts at night thinking I was going to help people in insurance. But I spent about 12 years as a registered psychotherapist, and I specialized with mental health counseling, addiction counseling, homelessness, poverty. And the later years of my career, the short version, I guess, is my husband and I, we bought our house. And 6 months into our mortgage, he was in a very, very bad motorcycle accident. And I like to say he's okay. He's back to work. He survived. Everything is good. But in that colossal experience, what I saw was how one moment in your life can change so much. So what happened was he was airlifted to the hospital, immediately off work. He got a short-term disability, and that paperwork was intense. But then fast forward a little bit, he was actually denied his long-term disability. And so the whole time that we were going through his recovery, I was also taking work off. Like I was not going in, and I was full-time caregiving for him. And that really opened my eyes to, if we didn't have some savings in place, it would have been a really difficult time to pay our new mortgage. And then I started thinking, well, what would have happened if he actually did pass away? Would I be able to stay in our home? How would that have even transpired for me? And so then I just started to really pay attention to the world and what was happening with the financial sector and families that I knew. So all in the same year, I also lost a friend to cancer. He passed away at 34. He also had a family. And I started to see how disabilities, injuries, cancers, illnesses are really impacting people. And I don't know if it's just now I'm getting older, now I'm seeing it a lot more, but like in my mid 30s, I shouldn't have like 5 people that I know who have had cancer, multiple people who have injuries and disabilities. And so I just started to notice, and I started to pay attention. And then COVID hit, and I started to see how even just the housing market changed if people were renting versus home ownership. And coming from a mental health lens, I also started to notice how people's personal finances affect their anxiety, depression, their stress, their relationship, their health. Every component, I was starting to connect back to their financial health. And so I went back to work for a month and a bit. And then I just was like, I can't do this anymore. I needed a different vehicle to help people. So that's what led me to insurance. And I've been learning so much about it, helping so many people get the education that they need in order to properly protect themselves and their family. So that's kind of the short and sweet version, we'll say.
Wow. That's a pretty wild way to lead into that career, but I mean it's really cool that you've had the experience of like in the mental health industry. It's definitely not cool to have to go through all the tragic experiences and whatnot, but thankfully, like you said, your husband, he recovered and is back to work and everything.
Yep.
But yeah, I also lost a close friend of mine to cancer back in 2018, and he was in his late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those things like you are left wondering, okay, well, why is this happening? But yeah, and then when you get more into the actual financial side of things, it's to say it's stressful is very, very much an understatement. And
Yeah.
I actually went through something like that where I walked away from my job a year ago because I got into a real estate deal that was a financial disaster, and having the financial stress plus the stress of the pandemic. I was in the swimming pool industry, and it had one of the biggest booms ever, because everyone was staying home, wanted to put their money in their
Yeah.
backyards.
Yeah.
And so you couple like two extremely stressful situations, and it just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. I need to walk away for my own mental and physical health. And luckily, um, I had the finances to do that. But
Mm.
we live in a day and age where that is not a common thing, especially now when you have like rising interest rates and whatnot. But so it is cool that to see where you've come from to get into this field. Um,
Yeah.
we were talking a little bit prior to the show here, just kind of getting into that industry. Is there have you always been with the same company? Um, okay, you have, and
Yes.
you said
Yes.
you're looking at starting your own brokerage in Kitchener.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm really excited about it.
and what has led you to that decision?
So, so the platform of World Financial Group is very, very similar to the real estate model, where you get to a certain point, you can run your own team, you can open your own brokerage, and the really cool thing is that you're not really in direct competition with anyone else because the whole purpose is to serve the community. And so for me, my main branch is actually out of Thunder Bay. So
Wow.
when I was, yeah, when I was in training, I didn't have the luxury of being in the office, being around other people, being around my mentor. And so I decided very, very early on in my career that that's what I was going to build because it just made the most sense to me. It's if I don't have something that I think I could have benefited from, I'm going to go and create it. And so I've worked really hard to create a lot of good connections. And what's really cool is that now other teams, even not even direct to my brokerage, are coming to our team meetings because they value the environment, they value the culture that we've created as a team, which is in turn helping more people and more agents be successful running their business.
Wow, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
I know that like you seem to always be doing some sort of event, and
Yes.
whether it's related to like agent training or um, educating people on different areas. I think it's amazing that what you're doing, because we again, we talked a little bit before about how there's kind of this preconceived notion that follows the your insurance salesman or salesperson, um,
Yes.
and I think to take it upon yourself to break through that noise and truly, especially with what you just shared with your journey, like to break through that noise and kind of put yourself out there to say, like, this is why this is important. Like, do you
Mhm.
have um, any of those events coming up in October or November?
Yeah, I mean, there's always events actually. I'm missing one this weekend. There's one in Edmonton. A few of my teammates are actually going, which is really incredible. We also have one in Thunder Bay, and it's run by my senior broker. And it's an opportunity for us to celebrate and recognize agents within the team, but it's also a personal development, personal growth type of event. And I think that's the biggest piece why I love our company so much, is that the the experience of an agent event is you're personally developing, you're personally growing. Now, on the community side, the education side, we're looking at spaces to run community events for education, for our expansion campaign. So we run those once a month. I know our next one is booked for November 1st, I believe it is. Don't have the location set yet, but we are looking at doing them every month so that people in the community have an opportunity to learn about the very basic financial concepts and strategies that they can implement with our help. And then for people who are looking for more work or part-time income or a career change, we also share about our expansion in the region as well. So, I mean, there's always events happening. I feel like it's something that I love about what I do. Um, Last November, I also ran a fundraiser. So that's also in the back of my mind, is what's our next big fundraiser. They ran one in Thunder Bay very recently for BACA, which is Bikers Against Child Abuse, and they raised, I think it was close to 25,000. And then WFG, the charitable trust, is matching that. So that just like
Wow.
ignites me so much, because being from the nonprofit sector, it's really, really cool to be on the giving side as opposed to like waiting for the next grant to come in or something like that. So I am looking to do something in November, December. And most recently, I also lost another friend. And so I'm thinking about doing that for mental health. So, really looking at how finances are impacting mental health, depression, suicide, anxieties, because that's what I'm also seeing a lot of. So I think giving back to that area is my next big fundraiser.
Wow, that that's amazing to be able to, like, as you said, to be able to give back and seeing both sides of it. Like, that's huge.
Mm.
Do you have any idea of what sort of um, fundraising event it would be, or like, do you have a few ideas in mind?
I have a few ideas. Last year, I ran the event for the Women's Crisis Services, and something that we did is we had it was kind of like a stag and doe style type of event. So we had door prizes and draw prizes. We had guest speakers who shared their lived experience, which it was incredible. And then we had the CEO from Women's Crisis Services there as well. It was fully catered. So it was just really like a very nice community awareness event. And so for the mental health side, still looking at the best nonprofit to connect with for that. And then it's going to be more or less around the same style, where it can do a presentation on some financial concepts and strategies that can help. But I believe that stories and people's lived experiences are what are going to change the next generation or the next person or the next family that I help, because I've seen so much diversity in the plans and the families that I help.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do like the approach there because you've kind of tied it all in together where, you look at how stressful it is when, your finances aren't in order. And to be able to educate people and show them how they can actually rectify that and get on the right path, it's huge. Like it's not something that's really talked about in the education system and whatnot, and that's always been a big cry for, like, if it's such a vital part of people's lives, um, but they're not shown how to manage it, or like how to even what to even think about when it comes to finances. What
And I think, sorry, I think
go ahead.
too, saying that point too, with it not being taught, that's why we take an education approach, is we want people to walk away at the very minimum with some knowledge and understanding of what they can do to change their plan or where to start, so they have very basic strategies. And I think that's where you mentioned the insurance salesperson and kind of that icky feeling that people get, and I totally understand why. But I think the approach that I take and the approach that I teach my agents to take is we have to take care of people first. And if that means we got to look at their debt, or we got to, start them on a savings plan, like that's where we're starting. We're not pushing a product for them to purchase if it's not something that is in their budget right now. We're going to teach them the value and the importance, but we're going to start with what's most important. I have a client recently I thought of when you were talking, and she had an insane amount of debt, was struggling with her mental health because of it. And we explored all options, and we were able to save her $77,000 and consolidate a bunch of it. And it just, like, being able to tell somebody, like, hey, here's the decrease in your payment, here's what you're going to owe, as opposed to the 95, or I think it was 102,000 that she owed. And it was just like, she was brought back to life. Like, she just had more energy and more enthusiasm. And she was like, I'm really excited to work more with you, to help more people. And just that infectious style of running a business, especially in finance. Like, you have to remember, you're dealing with people who are vulnerable, right? They're in a vulnerable position. There's a lot of embarrassment. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of guilt. And even people, I've worked with a woman, and she had over $1 million in her investments. And she was just like, I don't pay attention to them. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just there. I don't really pay attention to it. And so just giving people this space to learn and then grow with where they want to go, I think that that's really important as well, which also eliminates those feelings of like, I'm just here to push a product, or I'm just here to push a sale, because I don't have any quotas. So to me, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like your approach is more about actually helping someone get to where they want to go, rather than helping yourself and seeing if their destination's kind of along the way.
Yeah.
And
you're always going to have that type of person in a sales industry, right? You're always going to have the person who's thinking about their commission first. And I just don't believe that's the way to succeed for myself anyways. So
absolutely. It's like the book, the Go Giver.
Yeah.
That's like what they talk about is just like give more than and don't expect anything in return, but it's like a universal law that it just happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if okay, so if let's say you and I were sitting down and I said to you, Brittany, I am like, I don't know, let's say I had like 50 grand worth of debt. Maybe it was student debt or something.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know where to start. What are some questions that you would lead with, or what would you want to figure out first?
Yeah. So, I mean, as any professional, like we have a compliance department as well. So, I would go through we call it a needs analysis. So, we literally go through every single component of someone's financial plan. Do they have any assets? Do they have liabilities? What are their interest rates? Do they have any savings? What are those interest rates? What are the debts? And then we're going to strategize. So we're going to strategize with, okay, can we wrap this up into a mortgage? If we can, great. If we can't, can we consolidate it into a vehicle loan? Can we do that? If we can't, then there's also debt repayment strategies. So there's the snowball effect, there's the avalanche approach. And so I get to play around and see which one gets the person debt free as soon as possible, the less amount of interest that they're paying. So I can actually see, if somebody wants to use, like I just had this conversation yesterday, a gal said, I have, a couple $1,000s in my savings account. Should I put it all on my credit card, pay it off? And then we're back to zero. And I was able to show her, okay, if you do that, this is how much you're saving in interest over the next 6 or 7 years. And it was like $2,200 that she was going to save just in interest payments. So then it's a discussion of, would you rather make payments a little bit higher to save on the interest and cut the time down, or would you rather pay it off but continue to work with me so that your habits change, so that you're not back into the same debt cycle? It's just finding the approach and the strategy that makes the most sense for that person.
Yeah, and that's cool because you have different avenues that you can go down. You're truly trying to find like the perfect strategy for that person. So, all right. In terms of insurance, this I think is a very very hot topic because to really understand like what type of insurance people should seriously be looking at, or like what are some of the must-haves, or some that you are like, this would make the most sense to consider first, and what are why would you recommend those?
Yeah, I mean, there's staples that create a solid foundation for somebody. Obviously, things that are going to protect your income. So critical illness insurance and disability insurance. Something that people get caught up in is that they have something through their employer. And this is the biggest hurdle that I see, is that they're like, oh, I have coverage at work. So what I like to do is figure out, what do they actually have through their workplace with them. So we're learning together what their work actually covers, and then I can complement that as well. Or I can completely change if they don't have any workplace coverage. Then it's really important to have that for business owners, entrepreneurs, independent contractors, because they don't have anything taking care of them in terms of their income. So the difference between critical illness and disability is, critical illness is you get a tax-free lump sum payment, and it's designed to help you maintain your savings. So a lot of the time there are expenses, medical expenses that are not covered under benefit plans, OHIP, treatment costs if you want to go to a different country for a medical procedure or treatment, like those are coming out of our pocket. And so it's designed to eliminate that financial stress or that financial burden when you're already going through a physical illness. So I do recommend that. And there are products that, you can strategize how much amount they should have. Typically, you want to have 1 to 2 times your annual income. And then with disability, this is where most people don't think that they need anything because they're covered with short-term disability or long-term disability at work. There's always stipulations though. Like sometimes it has to be at work. You have to be injured or else you don't get covered. So for example, my husband was not at work during his motorcycle accident, right? And so that was kind of an issue that we had to fight through in battle. And it's usually only 60% of your income. So what I normally ask people is if you had to pay like a $20,000 treatment, would you have the money to do that? Usually it's a no. Or if your income went down 60%, how would you be able to maintain your bills? How would you be able to maintain your savings? So it's a way to keep your income consistent and eliminate that financial stress, that financial burden side when you're already going through something really stressful. And then the third one is obviously the life insurance side. So the life insurance is more for your family so that your family isn't going through the financial burden when you've passed away. So the reason why people would do that is to cover any outstanding debts. So if there's a couple, right, if they have a mortgage or if they have any other debts, that life insurance can be paid to cover that. And then final expenses. I don't know if you've ever had to go through that with somebody before, but the range can be anywhere from like $20,000 to $50,000 for like someone's end of life expenses. And there's so many things that people don't consider. Final taxes, capital gain taxes, there's, funeral costs, burial costs, like that is a whole industry that makes money off of people dying. And so what we look at is, okay, who also needs to be protected from those costs? Could be a spouse or kids. And when there's kids or somebody who's financially dependent on you, if your income is completely removed, we want your family to maintain that same lifestyle. So replacement of income is usually very important. It's often forgotten about. And then there's so many different kinds of insurances and there's so many different things on the internet that people read and, some of it is true and some of it's not true. And it's really being able to take the time to figure out, number one, how much coverage should somebody have? That's the most important piece. The second piece is what type. So there's 2 types. There's term and permanent. And then you're really looking at what makes the most sense for that family at that time. So that's a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, it's really good to know that and to have you explain it because it's a lot. And
yes.
I think it can be so overwhelming that it's just one of those things that it's too overwhelming to think about. So it's just thrown in a closet and whatever happens.
Oh yeah. Like if I can leave any type of takeaway, I would say is that I encourage people to never rely on their employer to cover them. Like it should be our own, it's on me to make sure that my finances are taken care of. I own that. And I think we've just been conditioned to think about, oh, I've got workplace coverage, but 9 times out of 10, it's never enough. There's always a fight, right? There's always something that's like declined or not approved because, it is workplace coverage and everybody gets approved. So I do recommend that people think about that as it's a bonus. If you have it, great. That's awesome. If you don't, take ownership and learn what you and your family actually need.
Makes sense. What
Yeah.
so you alluded to the disability that you were comparing, uh, like a person, if they say they get uh, disability from work, we'll say,
Mhm.
and you said, well, I like to sit down and figure out, okay, what do they actually have, and is that something that I can build off of, or if it needs to change, uh, do a complete 180 on. What are some questions that people should be asking their employer as it relates to their insurance coverages through their company?
It's a really good question. I think first and foremost is most employers will give you a package. And I think it's important that they sit down with you and go through everything that you have. From there, I think it's important to know, do you have the option of buying it out when you retire? Or what happens to the coverage if your employer restructures and they let you go or you leave the job? What happens to that coverage? That's a big piece that people often don't think about. Um, and I understand that because I didn't think about that either when I was an employee. Like it was just like, hey, this is awesome. I have this coverage, I have the benefits. I did not take the time to understand what I fully had. So I think it's not necessarily one or two specific questions, but I would say take the time to really understand what the benefits are and what might be the gaps and the holes for your overall financial plan.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, as it relates to, say, entrepreneurs and small business owners, if they're, I guess, just starting out in that space,
Mm,
it's like a completely different conversation, right? And so, um, it's the same. Would you say it's the same three different insurances that they should be looking at? So, yes.
yes. Yes. Like very important for entrepreneurs to do that because there's nothing else, right? Um, if they get sick or if they have a disability, excuse me, then there's nothing there for them. Sorry.
It's
You
all
can cut
good.
that part out. I have a lingering cough there.
I find that with the changing seasons, it's
Hmm.
just like prime time for that. My girlfriend's actually, she was in Sedona for a week there, and she came back. She had no voice, and then it took like 4 or 5 days for that to recover.
Yeah.
And then like today she woke up and she's coughing again, not a lot, but like initially coughing, and I just chalked it up to changing seasons. But one tip
Yeah.
that I will give you is something that I do when I get coughs and whatnot is I get some cayenne pepper, just like the in the shaker, and I'll just put some on my hand and you know consume it, take a
Take it
little
back.
glass of water, and it just seems to kill whatever's bugging you.
I had done lemon and oil and cayenne pepper, and you just take it in a shot. So
Yep.
I'll go home and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's it's like a fire water or something.
Yeah.
My my girlfriend's mom made this stuff, and it's like it has that. It has like garlic and stuff in it,
Oh, all the
and
health
yeah,
stuff. It's
it's
awesome.
yeah, all the great stuff that tastes extremely good when put together.
Yes, right.
Okay,
Um,
so getting back to, are you feeling better now?
yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Um, okay, so getting back to the insurance thing. When it comes to, say, critical illness or disability, I know it's going to really depend on, like, there's certain variables that will uh, indicate like how much someone pays each month.
Mm.
But is there kind of like a typical range you see for, let's say, someone between like 30 to 40, and what's the typical, say, between 50 to $70,000 a year, I guess? Like, is there? I don't know if you know that off. And again, there's also going to be other variables in that too, right? But
Yeah,
um,
I was going to say that that's probably the hardest thing is when I don't have a software to build a plan, that people always think it's like they want to find the cheapest rate. And I totally understand that because I'm pretty frugal too. But the variables are whether you're male or female, smoker or non-smoker, your previous health issues. So if you've seen specialists or had any type of medical condition or medication or anything like that, your family's history as well. So like your immediate family, and then your age. And that's the biggest piece that I look at. Okay, so if I would have got my policy 10 years earlier, it would have saved me thousands of dollars in the long run. But people often think that I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't need insurance coverage. And that's the one myth in the industry that I'm very passionate about changing, because the younger you are, the healthier you typically are, the more inexpensive it is. So it's more cost effective in the long run. You can actually get insurance on a 15-day-old baby. That's the earliest that you can get it. So any parents, I usually like to recommend, if you have a child and they're 15 days old, that's the time to get them insurance, right?
mhm.
It can be $20 a month, and they can have a lot of different coverages. Where it gets tricky is when something happens. That's when people start thinking about it. And at that point, then they're going to have to pay a higher premium, because we're going to have to go with a company that doesn't do as much underwriting. So that's the process where they look into your medical history and see what you have going on, what your health condition is. And then to be able to afford that sometimes is just not feasible for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you in an earthquake or something right now? Or
Yeah,
so like
I'm
there's
in.
like lead pipes falling off the shelves, or
That's pretty much what's happening behind me.
that's all good.
I rent an office from a real estate team,
Yep,
so I think that they're doing something.
that's
I'm
all
not
good.
too sure. Yeah,
Um,
hopefully it's not too disruptive.
yeah. No, I think that's good advice, because it really does make sense. And like you said, some people live by that notion of like, well, I'm young and I'm healthy, and it just reminded me of the old saying, like, the roof only needs fixing when it's raining, right? And
Yeah,
when it's not raining, it doesn't need fixing.
that's
So
right.
it really is, like, when you start thinking, and it's so hard to do when you're, even a teenager or in your early 20s, and you're like, well, I got the world but at the palm of my hands, like I'm invincible, uh,
Yes,
until you're not, right? Um,
yes.
so yeah, it's definitely something that should be looked at. And I know early on, like, I had no idea, but uh, one of my best friends, he got into insurance, personal finance, and he was the one that brought this to my attention. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 21, 22, and I
Yep.
was like, I have no idea about this, but I've learned a lot from you in like the financial realm and
Mhm.
all that. And so yeah, tell me what I need to know sort of thing, right? So I think it's really good that you're doing that.
And I know we were going to be talking about some of the challenges as well. And something that I do find is that because I came from social work, right, people are so used to me talking about thoughts and feelings and behaviors. And so then to come in to talk about financial health and that regards, that has taken a little bit of time to develop a reputation and credibility. But I think what happens is because I'm a broker in the industry, I started to show people how to save money, even if they did have a current policy. So I'll just give you a quick example. Was working with a guy, he's 36. He had $1 million term policy. He got 14 years ago. I did a quote for him 14 years later, same amount. Now he has it for 20 more years. And I came in $1 less than what he's currently paying.
Wow.
So that to me is like, wow, that's huge, because now him and his family can have that coverage for 20 more years as opposed to only 7 more years. And then at that point, his premium would increase like crazy. So now he has another 20 years of savings, but still has the same amount of coverage, which it just blows my mind. Like I double checked because I was like, is that for real?
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it never hurts to have these conversations, right?
That's right. And like to have a second opinion is really valuable too, I think.
Absolutely. And going back to your what you said about like the challenges of, people are used to seeing you talk about emotions and feelings, mental health, and that stuff. To go from that to now talking about developing a financial plan and everything in that space, I think it's actually more of your advantage because you have that background and because you see the connection there. It gives you so much more credibility when you're bringing those two topics together, especially in this day and age where we're going through an extreme mental health crisis, and we're also going through an extremely financially tough time. That those two things together, how do you cope when you're not well off in either direction?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time that's the biggest stressor, right? And that kind of leads me into why I'm so open and willing to train people in the financial industry who don't have a background in it, because I've done it. They have to start making more money. Like that's at the end of the day, people are not surviving. Especially I see like the single income homes, right? They're the ones who are really, really struggling right now. Even some dual income homes, right? And I don't like to use the word struggle because then I feel like that keeps people there, right? But sometimes it's stepping into the opportunities that are there. And at the end of the day, if all costs are rising, so should our incomes. But the trap that people get caught in is when they're an employee, their employer is not keeping up with the cost, right? So I think in 10 years that I was a psychotherapist, I maybe got 2 or 3 raises and they were like a 1 or a 2%. So even that is not like, that's not a desirable raise. Whereas running my own brokerage, I can go help more families, and that can contribute to my own personal financial plan, right? Like it's kind of a win-win-win for everybody. And so that's kind of my main focus right now, is building and growing really solid, trustworthy, credible agents in the industry to fill all the other advisors that are going to be retiring in the next couple of years, because there's a lot of them. So we need to replenish the whole industry, basically.
Absolutely. That's a good a good journey to go on. And So anyone starting in the insurance world, someone that's looking at maybe joining your brokerage and working with you, what
Mhm.
are some tips or tricks that you would give them for starting out their own business?
So the first thing that is the most important, I think, is have a mentor, because it's not the most exciting licensing process to go through, although it can be a very quick one. Um, but to have a mentor to learn from who's done what you've already done. So I'll use my mentor for an example. You know, she'll easily make 20,000 passively a month. So I connect with her every single day. I keep her very, very close to me, despite her being in Thunder Bay. But having that mentorship to help you through, whether it's a career transition or just working part time, it's really it's really exciting to have somebody to teach and guide you along the way, because that was something that I missed even in social work, right? Everything was like, once you're licensed, you're good to go. Everything is like behind closed doors. You don't really have somebody giving you that automatic feedback, that criticism, that guidance, that mentorship, and the coaching. And I think that's the biggest piece. And then the second one is be very kind to yourself, because it does take time. It does take the work and the effort to put into changing a career, running a business, running a team, and the personal development is 100% needed. If you are not personally growing, then your business is not going to grow either. And so that's just what I have seen and what I've lived through that I would recommend is make sure you have a mentor.
That's so true. And that's true in a lot of different areas. I had
Yes.
Ryan, the logistics monk. He was the first interview that I did. And he talked about how his mentor, when he first started in the logistics industry, he's like, I didn't know anything about logistics when I got in. But then when I started seeing how much you could make as in sales, I ventured into that, and I had this mentor that, showed me the ropes and told me what I needed to do. And it was the same for me in the pool industry. Like
Mm.
they I did a co-op as a designer, and then they wanted me to come back because I did some marketing for them. And I came back, and then they're like, okay, now you're in charge of distribution. I was like, that's awesome, but I don't know what anything is or where anything is. So I like relied heavily on one of my bosses, and thank God that I don't know how he didn't go crazy because of I was basically his shadow. But
Yeah.
um, to get that advice from someone who has done what you want to do and who has the the lifestyle or has the habits that you want,
Hmm.
it's it, you can't say enough. It's invaluable how far ahead you get by working with a mentor. And so I
Yeah.
think that's awesome that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think, there's always two options, right? You can take advice from somebody who lives the same lifestyle as you, or not as a desirable lifestyle. Or you can take the recommendations from somebody who has the lifestyle that you are wanting, and who are you going to listen to, right? And so, I'm not going to listen to the broke social workers. I'm going to go listen to the people who are making an impact, who are able to give back what my salary was in a year, and they can donate that easily, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
go and talk to people in that way. And I think, yeah, just making sure that you trust your mentor is another big piece. And not just have a mentor to have a mentor. It's like you actually got to do the growth. You got to do the work, right? You got to enhance yourself as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned the personal growth part of it. What
Mhm.
has been some of the some personal growth areas, whether it's business related or actual like personal related, Are there any sort of books or events or anything like that that have helped you along the way?
Yes, a lot. So I'll kind of keep it to like the top 3 or 4. I would say Ed Milet is, if you're not following his podcast or his social media, he's very much the top, like very close to Tony Robbins in that personal growth space. And he's actually an agent with WFG in the United States. So to me, that's really credible. He's built the business already. He has the podcast, he has the book. So he's also done a lot of this speaking engagements at our conferences. So I've actually heard him speak as well. So he's somebody that I definitely would recommend. And then there's the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. That book I have read multiple times, and I often reflect about it because it's so true, every component of that book. And if you're thinking about running your own business, you already run your own business, you want to be an entrepreneur, I wish I would have read it sooner than what I did, but I'm still grateful when I did read it, because then I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, it just validated everything that I was thinking and feeling and questioning and learning. And so Darren Hardy is the author of that one. And then the third one, and this is my focus right now, is John Maxwell. He's written a lot of different books on leadership. And so I just finished reading the 5 Levels of Leadership. And it blows my mind that I have learned so much more in this industry than I did in like 12 years of the social work counseling industry about myself. So for that, I would say those are like my top 3.
That's amazing. I didn't know that Ed Milet was a part of the World Financial Group.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy his podcast, and I really loved his newest book, The Power of One.
Yes.
Or Power of One More, I think.
One More. Yeah. The Power of One More. And
One More.
it's a couple of our agents on our team, this is really cool. My direct mentor, Paige, she's actually been to his house for training from him.
Oh, wow.
This is what I mean. Like, it's very powerful when you're in that space and you're open to learning and growing, right?
Yep.
The opportunities that come and present themselves they're just there, right? So yeah, it's a blessing, to be honest.
Yeah. I guess that's one thing that is highly underrated, is the just the network that you become a part of. Like,
Yes.
now you have a connection with Ed Milet. Like,
Yeah.
how many people can say that?
Right. And like, I think about the other associations that I get to have, and, just in my contacts in my phone, I have multimillionaires that I can talk to on a regular basis, who are so humble and want to help me grow our branch to what they've created out west. And so it's really awesome that everybody wants you to win in that way.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And also,
you have it.
This is the book.
Yes.
That you had mentioned, The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. I got this when it came out in 2015, and I was in my 5th semester of architectural technologies when I read it. And for anyone who has, or for those of you who haven't taken that program at Fanjaw, it is like one of the hardest or most time-consuming courses you can take. And I read this book twice in about 2 to 3 weeks because I could not put it down. It's filled with tons of golden nuggets. I think Darren Hardy was one of my most profound mentors early on, from afar. I don't have like a personal connection with him, but he did this keynote speech and it's somewhere on YouTube. I remember watching it probably close to a decade ago, and I haven't been able to find it since. But he did this keynote speech where he started off showing different images. One was a husky, and he said, "Now, depending on your life experiences or where you grew up, this image could represent different meanings. Some people can look at it and see, you know, the cute cuddly puppy dog, and others could look at it and hear like the snarling growl, thinking that it's going to attack you." And there was a few different versions of that he presented, and he just brought to light, to truly share that, you know, depending on your life experiences, where you grew up, the people around you, everything like that, like it conditions you differently. And so your thoughts and your ideas, that's why we live in such a diverse world, is because of all these different life experiences that people have. And it was so profound that, you know, when people, especially today, like, you know, people can be so divided on social media. And I think for the most part, you're just seeing kind of like not the worst of the worst, we'll say, but we'll say someone who's way on this side and someone who's way on that side. You're kind of seeing that in action. But to have a better understanding on like, this is why, like, you don't have to agree with how someone thinks, but
Yeah.
you can have an understanding that, I think at the end of the day, everyone wants the world to do better, or wants to be a positive, in the world, regardless of how they show up in someone else's eyes. In their head, I think they're trying to do good things. So if you can kind of get that notion that you know, people have different ideas and different opinions because they have different experiences, I just think that level of understanding goes a long way. But anyways, I kind of got off on a tangent there with Darren
Well,
Hardy.
it's a very good point too, because reading the 5 levels of leadership, they go into that a little bit to say, like, if you are here to really help people, right? Like at the core, that's what we're here to do, is support each other, love each other. You have to learn about other people. and I look at that as like, man, I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed to be able to learn about other people, because there's, like you just said, they have their own experiences, their own perspective, their own life, their own opinions. And I don't have to agree with everybody. Frankly, I disagree with a lot of things that happen, right? Like, even when people are like, no, I don't want to get the insurance plan, it's like, okay, if that's what you think is best for you, you know, I've done my due diligence, I've offered that. Or even in the team, if I make a recommendation on a skill to improve or develop, or just a way of thinking, you know, ultimately people are going to do what they're going to do. But I'm not here to criticize or judge where they've been or where they've come from. It's actually really cool that I get to kind of puzzle piece people together and to understand them, understand what they need, understand what they're looking for, understand the strategy that they need. And that goes into running a team, but also working with clients, just also being another human. Like, if I'm not adding value to a conversation throughout my day, what am I doing, right? Like, I just always am looking for, how can I serve this person that I'm sitting in front of or sitting with or going to be calling? Can I offer them something in return, with, like you said in the beginning, with no expectation of anything in return? And that's I think a true testament to how our branch is running and growing, is that everybody is now learning this important dynamic of, like, we value people where they're at. And so it's perfect.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it to a lesser degree on my end. It reminds me in the pool industry when like people would be asking about different products, and I would say, well, this high end product is actually not high end at all. It's actually terrible, and you should
Yes.
go with this if you want that, or vice versa. Like, um, for instance, everyone would come in to get these plumbing parts like elbows and tees and all this stuff, and they would be sitting there debating whether or not they should buy another elbow, and an elbow is like less than $1.
Okay.
So I would say, okay, so you're willing to risk driving 20 minutes to a job site, finding out you need it one more elbow just to drive 20 minutes back to spend 70 cents. And
Yep.
I'd say it's a lesser degree, but just figuring out, okay, what do people want or what makes sense for them, uncovering like what are they doing, where do they want to go, and just like playing that almost like Sherlock Holmes. You're kind of like an
Yes.
inspector trying to figure everything out and then put the puzzle pieces together and be like, here's what you need to do, right? And then be willing to accept if they don't want to do it. It's nothing personal. It's what do they feel comfortable doing?
Well, that's just it. And I think about some of the team members where their process to getting licensed, running their own business is completely different than mine. I was still working full time. Other people are not. Some people are. Some people are also other business owners. Some people are, they work night shift. And it's just being kind and, respectful of everybody else is on their own pathway to get where they want to go. It's not even where I want them to go. It's where they want to go. It's just, I'm going to help them stay on the path that they want and just help them deviate around any roadblocks that they come up to. Right. So that's my favorite part.
That's amazing. Well, Brittany, is there anything that you want to mention before we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I think I would just like to leave a little bit of hope for people. If you are struggling in your finances, reach out. We can chat, see where I can help. Or if you, at the end of the day, you want to make more of an income or thinking of the entrepreneur like this guy, you'll be fine.
Bye.
But I don't know how to install those.
What? A woman of your caliber in this community.
I'll figure it out.
All right.
That's awesome. So I think for people wanting to go into the entrepreneurial space, just know that there are other platforms that you can learn through, right? And so I want people to always have that level of hope, because I've seen too much where people make choices and decisions because they feel hopeless. So I'm here to offer that hope and inspiration for people.
I like it. And if people want to connect with you or reach out, how can they go about doing that?
So the best way, honestly, is my cell phone. Texting me is usually the fastest way to get a response. I am on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, email. There's lots of different options. Whatever suits the need of you, feel free. So I can share all my contact information with you, and then we can post that where we need to.
Sounds good. Well, Brittany, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, this lovely Friday, to sit down with us here and share some information.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Steve.
All right. I'm going to just remove you from the stage here, but don't leave.
Okay.
All right. So I really appreciate Brittany taking the time to sit down with us here and, just to take the time to explain some of the different products in the insurance industry and to give people a feel of what they should be looking for. And again, like, if you are employed and you're thinking that you're covered to really dive into, okay, what is my coverage? Like, what do I have? Just questions to ask. Think about, where do you want to go? What is your financial plan? Do you have a financial plan? And if you're looking for someone that can help with that, then by all means, reach out to Brittany, reach out to her team, because, as you've heard, she's got a wealth of knowledge and she's had to learn this, coming from a completely different industry, but having that knowledge of like making that connection between the stress, mental health, and how much finances play into that. So I think this is a really good chat, and be sure to listen to it a couple more times just to really dig deep into those areas. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of the PromoMinds Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Leslie, and until next time, take care.